Hi, welcome and namaskar. In this video, we are going to talk a bit about the golden capital of Lord Krishna, which was named Dwarka. We are going to explore how the city was mentioned in the Indian scriptures, and then we are going to discuss various archaeological and marine discoveries that are associated with the city in detail. So, let us begin. The city of Dwarka has been the subject of several Hindu texts beginning from the Mahabharata to the Harivansh. The Harivansh is an appendix to the Mahabharata that was composed by Ved Vyas and later inserted in the Mahabharata by him. It is also mentioned in several Purans and is associated with the kingdom of Chandravanshi Kshatriyas, which were known as Yadavs, also known as Vrishnis. The city is also referred to as Dwaravati or Kushasthali, which was supposed to be located on the western coast of India and is roughly correlated in location with the modern Dwarka town of Gujarat, which is located in the Okhamandal Peninsula on the Gulf of Kutch. Various excavations were conducted on this city. The first and the foremost of them was conducted by Dr. S.R. Rao, who was the director of the National Institute of Oceanography. He conducted several other excavations later, and today we are going to discuss what valuable basis those excavations provide about this city. The city is mentioned in various texts. In the Mahabharata, the one Parv describes Krishna mentioning Dwarika as his residence. In the subsequent Mossal Parv, which deals with the destruction of the Yaduvanshis, and Dwarika has extensive reference and description of the cities. How is the city described in the Mossal Parv? That means that Dwarika is a city like a river. The Vrishnis and the Andhakwanshis are like fishes in the city. There are horses, there are various chariots which serve like boats in the city. The city is replete with various musical instruments and is constantly echoing with the sound of the horses, the sound that the horses' hoofs make while moving on the ground. Ev- uh, the residences of the people who are living in the city are lavish. Each and every residence has its own uh, water bodies, small water bodies, and is elaborately decorated with various precious gems. This city is a walled city, like it has four walls surrounding it. It has intersecting streets that intersect at right angles, which is well planned. The centerpiece of the city, the center focus of the city, are Lord Krishna and Balram. The Mosalpur also describes that after the Vrishni Vansh had left the city, I mean, after they had been decimated in their infighting, Dwarika was submerged in the sea later on. Now, Sabha also describes a grand palace of Krishna and individual palaces for each of the wives of Lord Krishna. It also hosted an imperial court which was named Sudharma. There are several other references, we are not going to talk about them in this video. In the Harivansh is described how the city was constructed. The city was described largely built on submerged land which was released by the ocean. This implies to the concept of land reclamation. So, the concept of land reclamation is when you somehow rescue the land that has been submerged under the sea nearby to the coast and then build your structure over it. The classic example of this is Bombay. If you read the history of Bombay, the most of the parts of Bombay were slightly under the sea. Later, by filling it with sand and boulders, it was gradually brought up and then made hospitable by the British. Another similar example is the recent port of Mundra that was reclaimed by the Adani Group and now is a working port. So, what we can infer is that Dwarika is the first case in human history, recorded human history, of a land reclamation project of such a large scale. We are going to discuss a bit about this in the later section of archaeological discoveries, where the archaeological discoveries bolstered this argument. Moving on, in the Harivansh, the city is also described as a walled settlement. That is, it was surrounded by a double-walled fortress to protect the city and had four main gates leading into the city. Now, there were large houses of the people that were arranged neatly in rows, and also in the Harivansh, the grand palace of Krishna is mentioned. So, the city is described as an extremely well planned city, like the modern townships and cities that we have. Now, how do we identify the city of Dwarka in the scriptures with the modern concept of geography? So, how do we locate it? So, first, it is known widely that many prominent Bhakti saints that included Adi Shankaracharya, Ramanuj, Madhav, and Bhakti poets like Mirabai and Samarth Ramdas have pointed out that this city is the modern Dwarika city, that is the Dwarika in the Gujarat. The Dwarika city in Gujarat is also a prominent sacred town and is popularly identified with as the capital of Lord Krishna and is a prominent Vaishnavite site. So, this is our best candidate for the capital city Dwarika of Krishna that is mentioned in the scriptures. Now we have epigraphical evidences for this identification, which is given by the edict of the Garakula king Simhaditya that dates back to 574 AD, in which Singhaditya refers to his father as Dwarikadhipati or the ruler of Dwarka. So, Singhaditya in 574 AD mentions that the present day Gujarat Dwarika is the Dwarika of Krishna. Also, Ptolemy, the Greek traveler and the Greek historian, mentioned an island in the Gulf of Kutch which is known as Barake. So, this is mostly a reference that is taken to Bet Dwarika, a small island that is off the coast of Dwarka. The most prominent temple of Dwarka today is the Dwarkavati temple dedicated to Lord Krishna. And in the excavations that we will discuss later, it was found that this temple dates back to at least the 3rd century BC. Also, the modern Dwarka has the river Gomti that runs through it and empties in the Arabian Sea. Now, the identification and discovery of artifacts has been particularly difficult, yet that study has been undertaken, and it has been now firmly established that if we are to locate any place that is the candidate of the Dwarka of Krishna, it has to be the Dwarka of Gujarat. Also, about the river that runs through it and empties into the Arabian Sea. So, this is the same description of Dwarka that is given in the scriptures about that a river ran through the city and emptied into the ocean. So, after the candidate has been identified, what were the excavations that were taken to the city? So, the first excavation that was taken to the city was in the year 1963 by a team from Deccan College, Pune, that found the evidence of a city that dates back to at least the 2nd century BC that is buried 9 meters beneath the sand. Now, going by this clue, Dr. S.R. Rao, who was the director of the National Institute of Oceanography, led an excavation to the Dwarika city. And then in 1979, he established the presence of a Vishnu temple that was assignable to at least the 1st century BC near the Dwarkadhish temple in Dwarka. He also found two other temples that were assignable to the 2nd century AD and the 9th century AD that were also found at the same site, and those two temples were submerged and destroyed by coastal erosion. Also, as he mentioned, that Dwarika was a port town, both in the scriptures and in the archaeological discoveries. Correct? And there is a temple in Dwarika that is known as Samudra Narayan temple that is still worshipped by the sailors today. So we may infer that it was worshipped by sailors throughout history, and hence this Dwarika, that is of the present Dwarika, has been a port town since ages. Now, also there have been discovered in the same excavation that there are stone anchors that was used to anchor the ships in historical era in that area of present day Dwarika. Similar anchors to those found in the modern day Dwarika are found in the late Bronze Age in Syria and Cyprus. That means that there were trades routes that extended from the present day Dwarika to Syria and Cyprus, which implies that the present day Dwarika was a very major port town. The most important discovery that we have here is an excavation that was led by the same team in 1986, which discovered remains of a bastion which was constructed on the foundation of stone boulders. So, this indicated that the builders of that bastion, that fortress, that whose remains are found, took steps for land reclamation for the construction. So that correlates with the scriptural description that we have just described, that is found in Harivansh. Subsequent excavation also ascertained that this bastion that they had discovered was a double walled structure, and hence, this bastion is most probably referred by Dr. S.R. Rao to the double walled fortification of Dwarka built on reclaimed land as described in the Mahabharata and Harivansh. Other discoveries are also made of copper artifacts, and also a base of a marble statue that was dated to the 1st century BC was also found. Now, after the excavation had been conducted in Dwarka, we now move to marine excavations at Bet Dwarka. So, Bet Dwarka is a small island that is constructed just off the shore of Dwarka, roughly, I guess, 16 kilometers or something. So, Dwarka is described in Mahabharata and other texts as Varidurg, which is a fortress in the sea. And these texts raise a possibility that Dwarka of Krishna in the scriptures may have also included an island. Hence, excavations were conducted in Bet Dwarka. In 1981, a wall was discovered in the island, a stone wall that dated back to the proto-historic period, that is before recorded history. That suggests that at least by the 1500 BC or 2000 BC, a settlement of people existed on the island. And at least 4000 years ago, that is in at least 2000 BC, we find evidence through by bathymetry data that Bet Dwarka was connected to the mainland through land bridge, which means that the present Dwarka city and the island of Bet Dwarka was earlier linked together. And the wall that was discovered was also discovered to be double walled fortification like that of main Dwarka, which implies that Bet Dwarka and Dwarka were connected and part of the same city, the same settlement in history. Now, what else do we find? We find a seal that has a three-headed figure inscribed on it, which is characteristic of the Harappan period, which implies that in the Harappan period, the city was well occupied by people. And also, it has influence from the art of Bahrain, which means that we had trade relations between this Dwarka of the scriptures and the history with the Gulf region, which is also characteristic of the Harappan civilization. So, what we are trying to ascertain here is that this city of Dwarka, Bet Dwarka, was occupied and well settled in the Harappan period. And by this, what we can ascertain is that the city was occupied in the Harappan period, it was occupied in the Mahabharata period, and it is then later it was submerged in the ocean around 1500 BC. And then now we are having some of its part that are found in marine excavations beneath the sea, which implies that the Dwarka of history and the Dwarka of Mahabharata are correlated, and it is almost certain that both of them are same. So the Dwarka of Mahabharata is not a mythology, it is a well settled historical fact that was occupied from at least the proto-historic period, that is 3000 or 3400 BC, continuing up to the Harappan period, after which it was submerged in the ocean, as it has been described in Mahabharata around 1500 BC. Okay, so this is what we found about Dwarka. Now we are going to elaborate just a bit about the port of Dwarka, that is, what was the port that was found in Dwarka. So Dwarka was a port city, an important place from which shipping used to take place in history and also in the scriptures. Dr. S.R. Rao comments after his excavations, where he found more than 50 stone anchors. He comments that it may be said that Dwarka was the largest port of the mid 2nd millennium BC on the Indian coast, and its arm of trade extended to Bahrain and perhaps to Cyprus and Syria also. Iron anchors belonging to at least 1st century AD were found, which implies that after it had submerged and after people later resettled in the non-submerged regions, it again took prominence as a port in the 1st century AD. Now we also discover slipways. So slipways are structures on which boats come and dock in the ports. We've discovered slipways on the Bet Dwarka island that indicate that shipbuilding was a flourishing industry in the Dwarika region. So slipways are also used for building ships. So after you build them on slipway, it becomes very easy to release them into the ocean. So these slipways, they date back again to the proto-historic period till present. So which means that the port in Bed Dwarika was existent at least 5 to 6,000 years before now, and continued till Bed Dwarika, the city was submerged, and then it again became prominent in the early century C. So Dwarika and Bed Dwarika were continuous centers of important shipping, trade activity, and ports continuously from 5 to 6,000 years from ago till the early ancient history, just except the periods in which it was submerged under the ocean. So this is about the important port town that Dwarka was. So after all this, what do we conclude? We conclude that the Dwarka of the texts, that are the Mahabharata and the Harivansh, it aligns closely in description with the marine archaeological discoveries that we have conducted and datings. So what is the most probable contender for the historical city of Dwarka? That is Bet Dwarka. So most likely Bet Dwarka was the center of the settlement of the city, and which extended throughout the periphery. The link with Dwarka, it continued to the mainland. So it was a very huge city that had that island of Bet Dwarka, its connecting link with the mainland and also parts of mainland. Secondly, what we conclude, that it was occupied at least from the prehistoric period, proto-historic period or prehistoric period, roughly around 5-6,000 BC, till at least 1500 BC in the Harappan period, early Harappan period, Mahabharat age, after which it sank down into the ocean. These findings also attest to the advancements in ancient India in areas of land reclamation, harbor construction, and maritime trade. So, the maritime trade and the art of building port towns was highly advanced in India at least 2 to 3,000 BC. And we may authenticate the identity of Mahabharata and Harivansh as not merely mythologies, but texts that tell the history of the land, the geography of the land, and that the historicity of Lord Krishna as a figure who ruled over the town of Dwarka during the Mahabharat war.